As the dust settled, the last of the gods came to Norrath. Methaniel Mar, god of valor, and Mar, goddess of love, created the barbarians, a hardy race who settled the cold and rugged Northlands near the ruins of the giant empire. Being the youngest race, they were generally unwashed and rugged, possessing very few social graces. And while they too had a warlike culture, there were those amongst them who began to believe in something more. By this time, the other civilizations of Norrath had either long since declined or well on their way, and this small minority of barbarians saw an opportunity to triumph where the others had failed. Perhaps this was a seed of wisdom planted by the Mar twins, or perhaps it was only by chance. But as the barbarians spread out across the lands, warring with both each other and any other race encountered, this tiny movement continued to grow. And so even amidst desolation and war, there was hope. Thus began the Age of Blood. The last of the old races to decline was the Empire of the Elves. The Eldar forest spread across the entire southeastern quarter of Tenaria. Cities and villages built high into the trees housed thousands of wood elves, and the marble cities of the high elves were built in the forest clearings and meadows. Their white towers and spires climbing out of the forest, higher than the tallest tree. But then came the last curse of the gods. As Soles Grow, Lord of Flame, arched the spine of the Serpent Mountains, bringing heat from the burning sun to the ancient forest, the rivers ran dry. It rained less each year, and while the great elven druids fought long and hard, using their powerful magics to combat the change, they could only delay the inevitable. Slowly, the forest gave way to desert, and eventually, even great Takas His crumbled, and the elves were forced to flee to Naria, leaving much of their greatness behind. Thus began the Lost Age. The next period of Norrathian history as it relates to many of the races is the least known. It is surmised by the more knowledgeable historians that while the elder races regrouped and re-established themselves, a small group of barbarians were suddenly transformed, both physically and intellectually. Most believe this to be the last major and direct act of divine intervention. Perhaps the reason so little is known about this period is that the gods wish it to be so, deciding afterwards that they would have less to do with their creations. In any case, this small and enlightened group were the fathers of the human race, and they rapidly gained a foothold throughout the lands, studying the lost art of geomancy. The Combine Empire, as the lost race of humans is called, spread throughout the known world, but then died even more quickly than it grew, and for reasons still unknown. And while they are the ancestors of every human on Norrath, and their relics and ruins still litter the lands from Otis to Fadeware, little history of the period remains.